think now's a good time to go ahead and get started. So welcome everyone. I am Abby Chavez and I am the chair for the Latino Leadership Network, as most of you guys know is LLN. And today we have an awesome panelist presentation for you guys. We have Maria Sigüenza, who is the Executive Director for Commission on Hispanic Affairs. We have got Manny Santiago, who is the Executive Director for the LGBTQ Commission, and Alfie Alvarado Ramos, who is the Director for our state's Department of Veterans Affairs. And today we are going to be talking about Latinos in leadership, especially in state government. One of the things that the LLN does is we are a state resource group that tries to connect Latinos. We have a vision to build, connect, and inspire our Latino workforce. And in doing so, we are providing events such as this one, where we hope that we inspire you to take the leap and, you know, apply for a leadership position or get the trainings that you guys have been wanting or needing to be able to move up in state government. A little background about LLN. The group started back in 2015 as an unofficial resource group for state workers to network together. And they decided, you know, one day that they were just going to network. They did it over food, which is what a lot of Latinos like to do. Is we like our food. And what better way to network and connect with others that are in state government than over some really good food. And then the Commission on Hispanic Affairs nurtured the group into existence years ago. So for those of you that don't know about our business resource groups, they are a fixture in both state and private business settings. They are meant to promote inclusion, engagement, and job satisfaction around the topic or cultural connection. You guys are going to start seeing that more in your state agencies as the conversation about DEI comes up more and more. So with that, we will go ahead and get started. One of the things that these panelists will be doing is just taking a few minutes to discuss their career path and describe a set of professional job traits that you as the panelists feel have served you well and what you've learned along the way in your career. So we will go ahead and kick it off to Maria.
Hey everybody, as I mentioned in the chat, it's really great to be amongst family and friends today. LLN, the Latino Leadership Network, is an organization, a group that's very near and dear to my heart, having been part of it even before we were an established group, going to El Zarape for lunch on a monthly basis. So it's been really wonderful to see it grow. I am going to talk a little bit, as Abby had mentioned, a little bit about my career path, some job traits that I think, or professional traits that I think have served me well, and then also some lessons learned along the way. I started off actually as a hostess, server, bartender for a Mexican restaurant way back when. And I do want to actually, I start with that because I want to say that that's actually where I learned a lot of my people skills, right? You learn how to work with really difficult individuals sometimes. I don't know if, for me, when I'm hungry, I'm not the nicest. And so you learn to work with some really great personalities, but then also really challenging personalities. And I think that's really where I got my start in having and developing a knack for people. I went off and I was an accountant office manager for a small farm back in Skagit Valley, where I grew up. And then I also was a medical interpreter. And so these three jobs that often times get forgotten because it was the first, entry level positions, I think really formed a good foundation and developed a really good skill set for what I'm doing now. I was an aspiring physician back in 2011 through 2013. I moved to Olympia back then, in really following my other half, whose aspirations were to work in the environmental fields. And really at that time, the only thing that he could do was get an entry job at Department of Fish and Wildlife. So thank you, DFW, for bringing us here. And that's really where I had one of those moments where I encountered a fork in the road. I was in school finishing off some prereqs for medical school on my way to take my MCATs. And then I found myself working at Seymour Community Health Centers. I actually see an old boss here, Ramiro Cantu. And shortly thereafter, I started working for the state. And that's really where I had one of those moments where I was like, oh my gosh, the reason that I want to be a physician is because I want to provide that individual impact. I have the ability to speak Spanish and serve Spanish clientele and make a difference individually. And I honestly got a taste of changing some wax way back when I was in DSHS, and I just could not go back. I was also really lucky to have phenomenal leadership at where I was. I see another one of my old bosses, Christy, here in the room, and that was really, really important in my development, right? Is really seeking out opportunity and asking for opportunity, and being lucky enough to have bosses and an upline that was able to say, okay, let's figure out how we can make that work for you. So I started off actually before DSHS and Healthcare Authority, went to DSHS for a number of years. I consider that my mother agency. Had a really short stint at the Department of Licensing back in 2018 when there was a data breach. I was hired on to be an equity manager, and really that was a result of all of the cultivation of skills that I was able to develop back when I was in DSHS. And then today I find myself at the Commission on Hispanic Affairs. Back then, I was actually the youngest cabinet member appointed at the time. And it was one of the most surreal things for me. Never would have thought that that would be a position, one that I would have been seeking or been sought after to serve as. And it's been a long and winding road. It's been quite the experience. And I've learned a lot of things about myself. Some of the traits that I think I've been able to develop as I've gone through my career, both in state and out of state, is being nimble, being flexible, being able to work with individuals, cultivating. I'm innately an introvert and I listen, but I realized that innate skill was really important, because the part of listening that's really important is listening to understand, not necessarily listening to formulate an opinion or a thought or a response, which if you've worked with me, I'm usually the quietest person in the room. And that's because I am trying to understand and really trying to process deeply what somebody is telling me, whether it's something that I want to hear or something that I don't. I found that having a change mindset and a learning mindset was really, really beneficial. Being open to diving in and not being afraid to provide suggestions that, maybe it hasn't been the way that it's been done for years, but maybe it's time for a change, or being open to changing something that I own, some of the processes that I owned, because there's feedback that, this is not working. So being flexible and being able to work with people. Really, all of that work is rooted in respect, and it's rooted in trust. And so that's one of the very first things that I try to do when I start working with individuals, is really cultivate that sense of trust and respect and be genuine about it and be authentic. Um, and so really, I think that those are the highlights. You know, in a deeper conversation, I can probably tease out a lot more. But one of the things that I do want to say is that in all of this, it's also really important to take care of oneself, right? Because we can't show up to work and be authentic if we're not taking care of ourselves. And so to me, that looks like going to therapy on a regular basis, setting up really healthy boundaries with work and with colleagues, eating well, whatever that looks like for us. I love moving my body and exercising, and also disconnecting. It's totally okay to set that boundary and say, I'm not reachable during the weekend, and go backpacking if you really can't disconnect. And so one of the things that I've learned along the way is that we can't do it alone. We have to seek mentorship, and I think that's one of the most important things that that we can do as individuals trying to grow ourselves, whether we're trying to grow in our positions or really trying to grow within ourselves. And I see mentorship as a very multifaceted thing. You have mentors in your peers, you have mentors in your supervisors, you have mentors in your staff if you have staff. And there's always, everything is always a chance to learn. So I'm going to leave it there because I think it's been a little bit more than 5 minutes. And hand it over to my colleague Manny.
Hola, mi gente. Hi, everyone. Uh, just a heads up that I've been with allergies and crying all morning, so I've been like coughing a lot. Um, so I wanted to share with you a little bit of my story, and I am a very human-centered person. So I would like to share with you some parts of my story as a human being, and hopefully you'll understand how that fits into my leadership and into my professional development as well. So I grew up in Puerto Rico, and in the mountains of Puerto Rico, actually on the town north of where Alfie was born and raised, a mountain town and municipality called Adjuntas. And this is a coffee, a coffee town, and I grew up in a coffee farm. But when I say that, I don't want you to think that it was like a big, coffee corporation or anything like that. It's a family farm that the four of us, my parents and my sister and I, had to actually work on because we were the only ones that could work there. There was no money to pay other people. So so I grew up, in a poor household, dependent on things like food stamps and support from the government and things like that. My dad would do like some odd jobs outside of the of the coffee season and things like that. And that's how we supported ourselves as a family. And another part of my story is that I grew up in a church in American Baptist churches, or some people might know them as Northern Baptist. So the ones that the Southern Baptist split off of. And so that was very important to me. And it was very important because being Protestant in a mostly Catholic country actually helps you develop some skills and some, how to navigate the world that is not like you, that is different than you, and to appreciate the differences and to actually appreciate the diversity of the community that you grew up in. So, so we had all that growing up, right? I say that my mom is kind of a philosopher. So since we were kids, she shared with us two things that have stayed with me and have actually kind of serve as the framework for my leadership style and my professional, journey. And is her two sayings were, todo lo que hagas, hazlo con amor. Everything you do it with love, even if you don't like it. So put love into it. And she was always telling us that, like, wash the dishes, do it with love. I was like, but I don't like it. But we had to do it and do it with love. And we learned that. The other saying that she had, and she still has, is there's no problem without solution, even if you don't like the solution to that problem. No hay problema sin solución. And that has actually helped me a lot in my professional career. So, growing up, I went to public schools, and in Puerto Rico, there are those of you who are familiar with the island, and there are two boarding schools that are actually public. So public boarding schools, and one is for sports, and the sports people go there, and then the other one is for science and math. That was where I went. It's called CROEM, or Centro Residencial de Oportunidades Educativas, Residential Center for Educational Opportunities, in the west coast of the island. And being a very shy person, this was new to me. I had to interact with people from all over the island. It was my first time that I was actually on my own, with my parents, and I was still a kid. So it was an interesting opportunity for me to learn how to navigate a world, that was so foreign to what I grew up with, and with so many people from different walks of life in one place. And as you can imagine, because I went to a specialized school in science and math, I thought that I was going to follow that path. So my idea was that I was going to be an engineer and geophysicist. Actually, that was what interested me, and geology and physics, and sending people to space, and I don't know, like the the geological makeup of the planets and all that. That's what interested me. But as I said, I was raised in church, and life took me through other paths. So my background is actually in theology. After graduation from college, I went to college in Puerto Rico, graduated with a bachelor's in sociology, and then after college, I went to Boston to study my theology degree, and became the first openly LGBTQ Latino person to be ordained in my denomination. So my background is actually ministry. I served churches and ministries in New York, in Puerto Rico, in Boston, and Seattle, and Wisconsin as well. So how I ended up here, how I ended up doing this work that I do now. So I also, in between, college and my master's in divinity, I actually took some graduate coursework, and I'm actually 12 credits shy of my master's in public administration. And it was something that I wanted to do, I don't know, like as fun, I guess. But I never thought that I was going to actually apply those principles to my job, but I ended up doing it, right? So as I kind of grew out of Christianity and wanted to leave the work on ministry behind, I sought opportunities in nonprofit, and was hired as the executive director of the of Rainbow Center, which is the LGBTQ center here in Tacoma, where I live with my husband. So as part of that work, I had been involved in LGBTQ causes and immigration causes for a long time. So I have been advocating for LGBTQ inclusion and marriage equality here in Washington from the faith perspective and the Latino perspective, and reaching out to our communities. So so it kind of fit, my passions and whatnot. So what happened was that as part of my job with Rainbow Center, we were lobbying the governor and the legislature to establish this commission. I never thought that I was going to be appointed to lead the commission. And then it's always good to be surrounded by people who support you and who believe in you, because the night before the position was to close, right, application was to close, I was talking with my husband about this opportunity and how great it was that, the government was going to establish this commission, that our community was going to have representation. And he said, well, why can't it be you? What prevents you from doing that? And in my head, I never thought that I was going to be part of a governor's, team. But I took a chance, and I'm very adventurous. So I was like, sure, why not? Let me send the information. and here I am, right? So it was a great thing to see how it developed, from lobbying the governor and the legislature to actually establishing the commission, and then being part of this first group of people that, along with the commissioners, that move the work forward. Maria mentions a couple of things that are always important, and is the having mentors and people who believe in you and who are willing to share their experiences with you. And I have two people in my life who had been great mentors. One was Gregorio Rivera, my one of my teachers in middle school, who was from the agriculture class. I was part of the Future Farmers of America, and I was their public speaker and won a couple of awards there. So Gregorio actually helped me develop that public speaking, skills, and how to talk to the people, because I'm very shy. But when you put me on a podium, I open up and I don't mind how many people are in front of me. But when you put me on a party, I'm gonna be on a corner, and unless you say hi to me, I'm not gonna reach out to anyone. So I really appreciated what Gregorio did, believing in me and believing that I could be a leader. And then the other person who also believed in me and is still to this day one of my closest friends and mentor was a professor of sociology in college, Angela Figueroa, who taught me everything that I know about feminism, about advocacy, about you know um, fighting for what you believe in, and actually getting people to be excited about the things that you're excited about. And I think that without their mentorship, I would not be here today. um, the other thing that I want to share with you, and it's a quote that actually I know that the LLN shared in promotional materials, but my philosophy is always that I am not here on my own. I'm here because of the work of so many people who you know um, journey before me and open doors for me. So I see it as my responsibility to keep a foot at the door and keep it open, because I know that I do have some privileges that other people don't have. I'm Puerto Rican. I speak the language. I have my degrees. I'm a cisgender man. So I know the privilege that I have, and I need to use that privilege to make sure that others who don't have that privilege and don't have that access are able to come in. And I know that that door is not open from the inside, it's open, very rarely. So if I get invited, as I was, it is my responsibility to keep that door a little bit open so other people can sneak in and demonstrate that all of us are leaders and all of us had an opportunity to contribute to the well-being of our society. So that's kind of all of it. I have obviously way more that I can share, but I am so looking forward to hearing from Alfie. So, Alfie.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Manny. And I just want to say how honored I am in sharing today with you, especially with Abby, our LNN chair, Manny, Maria, the LNN leadership. Like many of you, these people who have spoken already are the future of state government. Many of you also have it in you. I represent the past and the present. It's almost like the ghost of Christmas past, because I'm, probably one of the oldest members in the governor's cabinet. I have been with the State Department of Veterans Affairs for 27 years. It's been my only agency after serving 22 years of active duty in the U.S. Army. I was born and raised in Puerto Rico also, like Manny. I can tell you that my roots and who I am is based on my parents and the example that they gave me when I was growing up. My mother is a person who dedicated her life to serve others, and that has been my guiding light. My father was a shoe factory, an entrepreneur who did not succeed in a lot of his endeavors, but he never gave up or got discouraged and always moved kind of to the next thing to be able to see if he would be able to succeed. So I left Puerto Rico at the age of 18 after not getting a scholarship, a federal scholarship that I needed for nursing school. My father's military service was an inspiration to me. He served during the Korean War, and since I planned to join the military after college, after becoming a nurse as an officer, Well, since I was left hanging, I decided to sign in early, 4 years early, into the Army and became an Army medic during the Vietnam War. I joined the Army in 1971. That's probably a lot longer than many of you have been alive, but it was an incredible time where there were not a lot of women in the military. So because of my serving during that time, became a lot of firsts, breaking a lot of glass ceilings to be able to move through my career in the Army. But I will tell you, as a medic, I worked in a hospital, and lo and behold, about after a year of working at the hospital, I found out that I just absolutely despised nursing, didn't like nursing, which interestingly, if I had spent 4 years of my life going to school to become a nurse and then be able to work in a field that I would have been miserable, would have not been a good thing for me. So I was able to change careers, became a dental hygienist. I taught my profession, managed dental clinics and services, and eventually finished my 22 years of active duty as a Command Sergeant Major of Madigan Army Medical Center at JBLM. So that was my first lesson in life. Accept that things happen for a reason, and that something better or different that will feel you maybe right around the corner. So when something goes, doesn't go your way, let go. If because there is nothing you can do about some things, and if you dwell in the past, you may miss an opportunity that can go right past you if you keep looking back. So I came to this country thinking that I was pretty proficient in English. I learned my English with the Sisters of St. Joseph from Brooklyn at a Catholic school. I was thrown in an open room when I first came in the military in a place that had 50 beds, 6 feet apart, one right after the other, with women from New York, Texas, Kentucky, Massachusetts, who spoke versions of English I never heard before and I couldn't understand. It was like learning English all over again. And I can tell you, I could have let fear and embarrassment of not understanding or not being able to speak as professionally, but pressed on. Asked for the meaning of words, got corrected nicely by those who helped me when something came out wrong, volunteered to do things others didn't want to do, and got noticed. So that was my second lesson that I want to share with you, which is the essence of who I am today. Choose excitement over fear. Think about it. How different things can be with that mindset. Nobody goes into a new position, workplace, adventure, or personal endeavor knowing everything. So we should find the fun and excitement of learning and stretching ourselves. And all of a sudden, just things change. And then you couple that with gratitude. Gratitude every single day for even the smallest things that and that is one of the things that brings me to kind of the last lesson that allows me to focus on the future and stay positive. We attract what we project. You project fear, you attract skepticism and dismissal. You project confidence, you attract opportunity. So as I look at my career, I have a lot of people to thank, like Manny said. You don't do things by yourself. Sometimes it's being at the right place at the right time, being, using mentors and supervisors who valued my contributions, the grace of God, because sometimes, it's you have to be somewhat spiritual to be able to accept the things you can change, and a lot of elbow grease. And what I'm saying by elbow grease, a lot of hard work, because all of those things many times coalesce to be able to align the stars for you to be able to go into the next thing. So my lessons in life: let go of the things you can affect, choose excitement over fear, for where you attract what you project. Thank you.
Wow. If nothing else, hopefully their stories have inspired you enough. Um, those are some amazing stories. I have been lucky enough to get to know you guys on a little bit more personal level, but still, I did not know what your backgrounds were, and that is something that you know, for me, I feel as a Latina, we connect through the power of story and our background because we find those commonalities and we're able to say, if she can do it or if he can do it, then why can't I? So with that, just a little bit of statistics. So Washington's working age Latino and Hispanic population is projected to grow by 32% over the next 10 years, compared to 2% of the non-Hispanic population. Currently, Latinos represent 13% of the state's working age population, and yet they represent less than 6% of the state employee workforce. So with that, we'll go into our first question. And for those of you watching, if you have questions, feel free to throw them into the chat and I will try to get to them as quickly as possible.
Chat is real quick. Sorry to interrupt. The chat is disabled, by the way.
Oh, okay. We will work on getting it enabled for you guys. Thank you. So with the first question for our panelists, what are one or two key personal traits that you look for in a person when you are hiring? Maria?
How to whittle it down to one or two. Actually, the first thing that I look for is someone who's opposite from me. And I've learned this working at a very tiny agency where when I first started, we had a staff of 2, myself included. And now we have a staff of 3. But I think the very first thing that I had to do was really assess and be very real with myself where my weaknesses were, where my strengths were, and really be able to understand what the agency needed at that moment and then work from there. So I think that really this question is always going to be malleable for me. It's going to be different in different contexts, in different agencies, in different workplaces. But what I look for, just knowing that I'm a very analytical person, I'm very much of an introvert. I like harmony and consider myself like very much a type A personality. I look for somebody who's opposite, somebody who wants to hit all of the go buttons at the same time, who say, let's do this and it's going to be okay. And somebody who is just very, very confident in the way that they operate. And so really, I think those are going to be the 2 traits that I will always kind of look for, is that confidence in self, and then, you know, being a go-getter. But like I said, it's always going to be a malleable situation.
And so I'm guessing that we're going to continue this. So if anything changes, just let me know. But in addition to what Maria said, and I agree with her on most of what she mentioned, I also look for people who are human, right? So some of the questions that I ask, and I don't know how HR feels about this, but some of the questions that I ask when I'm screening candidates is, you know, what are some of your self-care practices? Because for me, it's very important, as I said, you know, I'm human-centered. So I want to work with people who are humans, who are, you know, connected with their personality, with their self, with their souls, with their humanity. And even if it's something, you know, that is very mechanical, what you're going to be doing, whether it's, you know, something that is repetitive or whatnot, I know that you're a human being and I want you to feel comfortable being that human being in this context. And that doesn't mean that conflict is not going to arise and, you know, we're not going to have differences, but I want you to feel so comfortable sharing your opinions with me and sharing your concerns with me that we can actually create something together, instead of me, you know, like offering orders or, you know, doing something. Now, I know that that's very different than many managers, especially in you know, very bureaucratic and hierarchical structures like the government. So you have to play, you know, with that and see who is like that. But I certainly like people who are very human and very connected to their humanity. The other thing that I look for is I I am the kind of person that looks at the big picture and I can see, this is where I want to go and forget about the day-to-day things. So I know that is important, but I look at the big thing, like I see the plane already put together. So I also look for someone that can complement that and can see, okay, Manny, before you get there, these are the steps, and these are the things that we will need to get there, right? So someone that complements me in that regards, and I know that Omar, my assistant, is here, so he can tell you about that, because I can see, I can see the final product. And it's sometimes a little bit harder for me to get into the details of how to get there. So someone that can complement that. So those are kind of the two things that I can share with you now. And if you have more questions, I can share more and some tricks on how to, to advance. Alfie said something very important earlier too, and is that, not only are you surrounded by all these people, but oh my God, now I'm blocking. But you said something really cool, Alfie, about working in cooperation and actually being also very self-confident on how you do things. And I think that that's key, like be confident. And I tell my husband this all the time. I don't know what I'm doing. I come to work and I figure it out and we do it, right? Like, obviously we all have a base of what it is that we're doing. Obviously, it's not that we're completely blind, but we're all creating together, and every day something new comes our way. So be creative. If you're creative, you're going to be good in my team. If you generate ideas, I love that. I love that confidence, having confidence that your ideas are good. And so I guess that would be another trait too. But
Yeah.
Alfie.
And for me, the confidence is definitely one of the things that I look for, and empathy. I like people who can put themselves in the shoes of others, to be able to feel whether it's their pain or their joy, and be able to have, again, that humanity of being able to bring themselves to work with one persona, not one for work and one for everything else. And, the fact, uh, as Manny mentioned, I am also the kind of person that, thinks always big. And I say yes to everything, which is not a very good thing when it comes to, you being in an agency or a position where if you think big, somebody else is going to be doing the work. So I like also to be able to have people around me who will be able to tell me no, we cannot do it, or well, maybe if we can do it this way, it may work, but not to be able to just listen to me and say yes. I do not like yes people, because otherwise we're in a lot of trouble, if everybody thinks exactly the same way. So I like to be able to have people who differ with me and can tell me why, and then be able to find other ways to get things done or put them off for a little while, to make sure that I don't stretch until my staff breaks, because that is also not good for the organization.
Great responses. And we have a question from a viewer. This one is for Maria and Manny. It's a two-part question, so I'll start with the first part. Excuse me. Since you are newer in your leadership positions, what are some of the skills or traits that you had to quickly develop to take your leadership to the next level and function as an executive director?
So when I was back in 2018, I got a phone call mid-year from someone that I consider a mentor, and they said, "Hey, Maria, there's a position going to be opening up, and I think that we need to get your name in the hat." And I said, "Okay. I mean, I just moved jobs. What is it?" And they said, "Oh, it's the CHA director position." And I said, and I laughed. I literally laughed. And I said, "Well, that is one, a far reach. Number two, I'm so honored that you would think that this could even be possible. And I said, I mean, sure, I can definitely, submit my application, a resume, etc. And whatever happens, happens. And I think that speaks to a couple of things that I had to learn really quickly once I came on board. I am naturally somebody who leads with humility and who I don't really ever present myself as an expert in many topics. And in fact, actually, because we're at the commission, I call ourselves generalists. But I had to be very quick on changing the way that I approach my working style and adding a little bit more confidence, because what I saw, being one of the youngest people in the room consistently throughout my tenure here at state government, is that self-doubt that I always included, right, about myself or my abilities was a detriment. And so really quickly, I had to really channel into that confidence, and channel into the, if not now, then if not who, then what did you say earlier, Manny? I'm having I'm having a moment. If it's not, why not me moment, right? Why not me moment? Why can I not do this? I have all the skills and the abilities, and I've cultivated and I've learned, and I have a learning mindset, and I'm willing to be open to learning and being wrong, right? But I had to really channel the confidence, right? And really, my answer is a twofer. I had to drop that sense of skepticism about myself. And it's not something that I say that I'm never skeptical about myself, because I think a healthy dose is always good. It keeps us on our toes and nimble and really true to ourselves. But I really had to figure out how to shift that.
So I have been in executive positions for over 10 years. And before that, I was either a senior or a solo pastor for 15. So I'm not really new to, to leadership positions. I am new to government work, but I'm also not completely new to how government works because of my studies in public administration. So I wanted to clarify that because um, the one thing that I had to change was how to navigate the world of politics and the world of public policy. That is the part that is a little bit different for me. I've been very active in partisan politics, and since I was back home in Puerto Rico, so how to navigate that, fine line between partisan politics and government policy has been a little bit difficult, and I guess that those of you who follow me on social media notice. But other than that, I think that there's something that I have to name and I have to recognize, and it's that the reason why I had the opportunity to be a solo pastor in many churches and or a senior pastor in many churches was because it was easier for a progressive church to find a cisgender man to lead them. So honestly, sexism was one of the things that prompted me to have leadership positions that were actually and still are close to women or non-binary folk or trans folk. And I want to name that because I am very cognizant about that reality. At the same time, I think that the challenge for me was, how am I going to overcome my shyness when I'm, speaking to an audience, when I'm leading, when I'm trying to convince and get people excited about an idea that might conflict with some of their principles or some of their ideas or some of their way of thinking. How can I have that negotiation? So, and at the same time, I think that my background in divinity and theology actually helped in figuring out, okay, how can we bring different voices together and find some common grounds and some common projects, right? So I guess that was the biggest challenge, right? Like how to get people who have different visions of something and get them all together to to work on a project or to work on certain goals. And but other than that, I honestly think that, you know, sexism had to do a lot of with, you know, me being in leadership. There were many positions that I know it was difficult for the agent, for the church in this case, to bring a female leader or someone that was not a cisgender man. So and then out of that, how do you navigate systems like that and leave them ready to actually open the doors to those who are different than you, which is part of what I've shared with you already. But other than that, you know, like the how to navigate that politics and policy world, that has been the most challenging. And we learn because, you know, and Maria knows this, you know, like, I don't know how to do this. How can I do this? I've asked questions to Alfie, I've asked questions to other members of the cabinet, to our policy person, and to staff who have been there forever, you know, like how it is that previous people did this. In my case, there's no previous, but how do other agencies have done this, or how do we navigate this? And to be, you know, like, to be honest, like, we're gonna make mistakes and not delve that there and not stay there. If you make a mistake, you know, try to amend it and move forward. So yeah. So,
Thank you. So the second part to this question, which Maria, you touched on, was what did you have to leave? What did you find that you needed that you had to leave behind in your current role? I believe, Maria, you were talking about the self-doubt, the skepticism. But Manny.
same for me, you know, not believing that I'm good enough, or that I'm going to be able to, as Alfie mentioned earlier, you know, my English, I too thought that, oh, of course, you know, like, I've been taking English since I was a kid, of course I know. And then my first job in New York City, I actually had to coordinate a conference in the South. And oh my God, I was like, I had never heard this accent in my life. What do I do? So, you know, to overcome that fear that you're never going to be good enough and nobody's going to understand what you say or things like that. That's something that I still, you know, I still encounter every day, to be honest. And it's like, oh, but you know, to leave that shyness and that less, I mean, lack of confidence in my abilities a little bit behind, and to think, you know, like, yes, I can do this because I have the skills, and I'm here because someone believed in me. So yeah.
I do want to add one more thing in the leaving behind question. And this one was more so a factor of the work. So, you know, I talked about how small our agency was, and I forcefully had to leave behind the team structure that I had in DSHS, specifically the division that is now defunct, OSSD. We had we were a really close, tight-knit family there. And there was always room for us to, you know, banter and throw spaghetti at the fridge and see what stuck in terms of ideas. And there was always room for the exploration of ideas. And so while I didn't have to leave that behind, it definitely was left behind because of the nature of the job. But I learned pretty quickly that I needed to ask for those relationships with my new coworkers, my surrounding agencies. So the ethnic commissions were very, very close knit in the sense that we meet on a weekly basis so that we can do that same kind of work together. I call Manny, you know, I've called, you know, other individuals, like Alfie, for example. I need help. What would you do in this situation? And really just not be afraid to ask for guidance, not be afraid to ask for other people's opinions, and then also not be afraid to go outside of those who might be an echo chamber for you. So seek people who are willing to be brutally honest and give you that feedback, because ultimately that will help you, you know, be better at what you're doing.
Awesome. One of the things, Manny, that you touched on was being shy. And I believe, Alfie, you touched on it too, when it comes to not knowing or not feeling confident in knowing English really well. That's, I think, a struggle amongst a lot of Latinos. It's one that, you know, when I was a teenager, I taught my mom to speak English. You know, it's just how our culture is. And so that goes into the next question. I worry that I will be judged by my heavy accent or skin color. How can I get past that in an interview or when I'm part of a team that's mostly white?
Let me take that one to kind of shake up the order a little bit.
Go for it.
Um, First of all, we know all of us that an accent is not a lack of intelligence or education. We know that how we speak is not necessarily what's in here. So we have to be proud of our accent just because of our legacy and our heritage. I am, but you know what we have to work on is on the quality of our spoken and written word. I said the quality, not how it comes out. So enunciation, the extent of the vocabulary, your grammar, sentence composition when you write are important so that we are understood. And that this is one of the things that being Puerto Rican, when I speak in Spanish, I speak 100 miles an hour. I cannot do that in English because then I speak in Spanglish, you know, and therefore the quality of my communication is more important than the delivery. You know, it's important to be able to read nonfiction literature, look at words, you know, that you don't understand, to be able to just develop the vocabulary, seek public speaking opportunities to practice voice projection, and don't be embarrassed if you stumble. You know, sometimes after a long day, if I am really tired after being in conference after conference on Skype or Zoom and all that, all of a sudden my accent, my tongue gets heavier. And when it does, I just let people know, hey, the Puerto Rican is coming out, you know, so brace out, you know, just brace for it. You know, so accents and just how you feel expressing yourself. As you probably notice, all of us who have been speaking today have an accent. Does that deter us from being able to just express ourselves? No. And remember, accents are sexy. Accents are sexy. So feel it, embrace it, and move on.
Yeah. And you know what I would add to that, and I agree 110% with what Alfie said. I love reading, so it's easy for me, you know, to pick up a book and learn more vocabulary. I remember 4 years ago, 5 years ago, when I got to Tacoma, and I had an interview with a podcast, and my best friend who lives outside of Chicago listened to it because he was really excited. I wanna, and and he told me, I loved your interview, but there was this word that you kept pronouncing that you kept mispronouncing. I was like, what? And he helped me, you know, like he told me, this is how you pronounce it. So I started practicing that word a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, and now I know how to pronounce it. And you know, we need to recognize that the fact that we speak an additional language, that is actually an asset to whatever we are working, right? And for me, what I keep thinking and what I keep telling myself, and it's actually truth, is that the fact that I speak with an accent means that I can navigate the world in two, in my case, three different languages. I can get information about this issue in my case, again, three different languages. That's a skill that other people are not going to have. So, you know, keep that in mind when you go to the interview. Keep repeating that to yourself. You know, you do have the skills. The fact that they gave you the interview is because they know that you have the skills. Your language skills are an added, right? And if you have an accent, you have an accent, and celebrate that. I am still very self-conscious of my accent, but I'm also learning how to navigate the world with my accent. The other thing that I want to say with this question is, um, we have to celebrate who we are, right? And I know that sometimes interactions, they can be a little bit difficult, and you're proud of who you are, you're proud of your accent, but the person doesn't know how to navigate that with you. So what I do oftentimes when I'm doing a presentation or when I'm at an interview or something, is I always make a joke to recognize that the fact that I have an accent is making you uncomfortable. And that is going to break the barrier, to break the ice, and people are going to feel like, oh, he gets it, it's fine, we can have a conversation. So one of my favorite jokes is that, being from Puerto Rico, I say, as you can tell from my accent, I'm from the southern United States. And people are like, what? Well, yeah, very southern, we are in the Caribbean. And I try to make, to make the person comfortable, that it is okay to feel kind of weird because I don't know how to navigate this interview with your accent. So to recognize that it's not just me who is, navigating this, you're also interacting with me, and you don't know how to navigate this either. So those are some strategies that I use. Obviously, everything is contextual, so don't go around, making jokes in every in every job interview, but read the room, try to see, how open the person is to navigate that world with you, and to recognize that they too are experiencing something that is different. So level the field and make sure that they feel as comfortable as you are, and as confident in having these conversations as you are. And you can mention that, you can mention, I know two languages. I know that my accent, that I have a thick accent or whatever, and I celebrate that. So be yourself. Yeah.
Well, thank you. We are coming up on time, and I want to be respectful of everybody's schedules. So, to the panelists, thank you so much for sharing your stories and answering some of these questions. For those of you attending, I did put our email address in the chat. If you guys have any questions, would like to attend one of our meetings, please email us at lln@ofm.wa.gov. This event is being recorded, and we will be posting the video later this week. So again, thank you guys. Thank you, Manny, Maria, and Alfie. And you guys enjoy the rest of your week.
Gracias.
Gracias.